Welcome to Sage Women, the podcast for midlife ladies navigating perimenopause, menopause, and healthy aging. I'm Melanie White, and each week I talk with experts and women sharing real stories, practical insights, and smart tips to thrive through this stage of life and beyond. It's Melanie here with the Sage Women podcast. I'm really pleased to introduce today Jess Taylor from QENDO, and I'm very excited to be talking about why endometriosis is such an important thing that we need to be having a conversation about, what some of the gaps are and what the future holds. Jess, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having us and being an ally in the space of not only women's health, but specifically for endometriosis.
Oh, we're on the same mission, absolutely. Jess, I know that your company has been around a long time. I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey and for people listening to understand how QENDO came into being.
You're quite right, Mel. So QENDO was established in 1988 by what I call incredible bra-burning women who started speaking about women's health issues, but specifically painful periods in the corners of libraries, because this was not a topic that was really discussed openly until recently. And so these women were coming together with their families and learning about things from libraries and closed door conversations with GPs, and it wasn't just really spoken about. And so what they did is they come together and tried to put an article in the Brisbane newspaper. I believe at first it was declined because it used the word period, and back then they weren't allowed to do that. But they went ahead and somehow was able to pop an article in the library saying, we're going to talk about endometriosis at this meeting. Please come if you're interested. And they were overwhelmed at the number of people who saw that article and thought, yeah, I have endo, or there's this little connection. And so this very informal group was formed, and women from that and families and partners and doctors and researchers from all around that had seen the article came together for the very first time and thought, right, this is much bigger than just our individual experiences. We've got quite a lot of people impacted. And it's a really similar story for me because I was diagnosed just over 12 years ago after many, many years of struggling with the symptoms of endometriosis, but not knowing that they were abnormal, because I grew up in a house with girls. I'm the eldest of four, two other sisters and a mum. And my mum has recently been diagnosed with endo because what her experience she thought was normal. So of course, that generational normalization passed on to me. And it was also a time where we didn't speak about these issues as well. And the information about a period was just, you get it, that's it. Here's what a tampon is, here's what a pad is, that's it. And so I really struggled silently because there was so much stigma around it, and through school had so many issues, but this massive expectation to continue and excel and not let your academia go down. And I would faint at school and end up in sick bay, put in ambulances because no one really knew what was going on. I remember someone suggesting that I was being a hypochondriac, but I just would literally be, I remember standing in the line to the library where we were having a class, and I was in my senior years, and my entire body just went blank, completely went blank. And I remember waking up in an ambulance. So this was a common occurrence for me. And it wasn't until many years later that I was at a family barbecue and my sister-in-law had said to me that she had just had a hysterectomy because she had something called endometriosis and adenomyosis. And I thought, what is that? So learn a little bit about her journey, went to my GP and said, look, I want to be checked for endometriosis. I don't want a hysterectomy. We now know that a hysterectomy is not a cure for endometriosis, but that was my in. Went to the GP, referred to a gynecologist 3 weeks later, after I had been to 11 different GPs. And I remember speaking to one who referred me to a psychologist. And they said, look, I think, there's just something going on in your head that you need to have looked at. I was sitting on a psychologist's lounge, and when you're in significant amounts of pain, your body reacts. There's, you're clammy, you can feel this. I've now had 2 babies, both natural births. It feels like a contraction. And I can hand on my heart say now that I know that I have felt significant contractions with two brothers. That is what this endo flare or endo pain has always felt like. And your body responds, of course it does. So this psychologist, before I had met my sister-in-law, going back a bit, she looked at me when I had a flare on her lounge one day, and she said, "Jess, no, there is something anatomically, physiologically going on inside your body. This is not in your head." She popped me in an ambulance and up I went to the hospital. But it was, a lot of that back and forth, a lot of that trying to work out endoscopies, colonoscopies, who you name it, you name the scope, I've had it. And it was that one conversation without my sister-in-law is not a health professional, that lived experience conversation that gave me my little nugget that I could go and search for. So fast forward to having surgery, I wake up and they write on your hand what they found. So I had endometriosis written on my hand. I had stage 2, stage 3, so they wrote that down as well. And I'm looking at my hand going, what in the world is endometriosis? Like, my sister-in-law has just said it. Now they found it. What is this thing? And so I was Googling and came across the QENDO helpline. And I called the QENDO helpline, and one of those original founding members, one of those original bra burning women that started this in 1988, answered my call. And I was very, very early 20s. She would have been in her 60s, huge age gap. But this woman speaking with me over the phone made sense of my entire life, enabled me to understand all the symptoms I've always lived with, and let me know that there were not only hundreds, but thousands of women out there who also were experiencing the same thing. And I remember laying there going, surely I'm not the only one. And this woman just confirmed that. So 6 weeks later, I not really recovered, but as we do with women, we get on with it, don't we? Attended the AGM and they said, look, we need to close down the organisation. It had been going for quite some time. They were really tired. They just couldn't continue. And I was very early 20s. Nope, you can't close it down. I've just found it. Please give it all over. I will pick it up and run with it. I had no idea what I was doing. My grandma came with me, my mum, my sisters, my family all came to the AGM, who have all run organisations themselves. So thank goodness I have these beautiful people around me to guide. But I had just found this light source who made sense of my life. And I could not let that go, because I thought, if I've just experienced this, how many other people are isolated and living like this? So we went through the process of bringing the organisation and creating what it is today. And that was just over 12 years ago.
That is an amazing story, Jess. I can't even imagine how you must have felt when you rang the QENDO helpline and somebody could tell you your life story or make sense of it. What was that
It
like?
was so, I remember being in our laundry because I thought, just reflecting on how this went, right? When you've just had this diagnosis and all of this information thrown at you, it's a lot to process. And I remember after the conversation, with that founding member on the helpline, she was sharing with me, this is what's normal, this is what's not normal. I hear you, I see you. This is true. There are lesions in your body. This is true pain. This is not in your head. And just how she was saying how much I believe you, I believe you. And I remember reflecting on that once I had got home. I was in the laundry washing all of the clothes that I had bled through and had accidents through. And I just remember looking at them going, right, I have been seen, I've been believed. All of these symptoms that you experience behind closed doors, other women are going through this. And so it was this incredible level of true support, validation, and that just ignited this fire in my belly that went, oh my gosh, how many other women are going through this and are suffering? And that is just not okay with me. So it was a mix of emotions, but it took me some time to allow those to come through.
It sounds so powerful. And it must have taken you a lot of courage. Like, what I'm hearing and what you've said so far is a lot of persistence you've really stuck with trying to find answers and going through all of the doctors to get to the bottom of things, and then not just finding your own answer, but saying, where can I take this now? I'm just really noticing your courage to go through that process and your commitment to take it to the next level.
I think since I was a little girl, I've always not followed the rules, and I have always been very curious. And also growing up in a household where if there's a problem, we fix it. If there's a problem, we just problem solve to the next step. And I've watched my family build netball associations and build football associations, and there's lots of different clubs that they've had to see these really big issues in sporting areas, and
Yeah.
different people, different personalities, and they've just done things. I've grown up with that around me, and so I applied what I had grown up with to this new world of mine, and had no idea what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing, but we listen to people, we listen to the problems. We don't need to know all the answers. We try and work out what do you need to help improve that part of your life, and we start to build it. And I think that's what we do so well when we come together as a community.
It's amazing, Jess. And on behalf of women everywhere with endometriosis, thank you for all of the work that you're doing. I've never been through it myself. And for anyone listening who's wondering what is endometriosis, could you give us a simple definition?
So endo is a really complex condition. It's many different types of things, but it's at its very basic, it's where tissue that is similar to the lining of the uterus is found in other parts of the body. As of 2023, it has been found in every organ of the body.
Wow.
It has been found in a very, very small amount of men, but most predominantly women and those who identify as female or those assigned female at birth. And now, by definition, endometriosis is found outside of the uterus. So we often hear women having or being suggested a hysterectomy, but because a hysterectomy, as we would likely know, that's removing the uterus, well, there's different types. But if you remove the uterus, yes, it turns off some of the bleeding and some of the hormones, but you haven't removed the disease because by definition, it's outside the uterus. So these lesions that look a bit like jam get stuck all around the organs. And if you think about those inflatable men at car sales, that's what our organs want to be doing. They want to be floating around in our pelvic area, and endo sticks them together and they get really upset and really angry. That creates something called scar tissue, which is very similar to, if you imagine a spider web with all of the silky web around. So all of the organs in our pelvis gets webbed together. And that can create, real issues, people's inability to urinate properly, to have really good sexual function, to bowel motions. And as those lesions grow and grow, they infiltrate the muscles, they infiltrate the tissue, and everything gets really stuck. And wherever they're set up in the body, they also start bleeding. So the disease gets progressively worse in some people over time.
Wow, that sounds like a significant disruption to life. I mean, I'm thinking about bladder function, bowel function, other areas of the body. I can only imagine it's obviously needs a lot of attention. And I was going to ask you, why do you think endometriosis awareness matters now? I suppose it always matters, but do you think that there's something different going on right now that people are rising up, or what is it that's really creating a call to action around this?
So many thoughts on this. So just to say that endometriosis is not a new condition, but it's a newly spoken about condition. And I think what we have done collectively is empower stories. We have, one, brought peoples with lived experience together, supported them so that they felt valued, that they had an opportunity to make a shift, make a difference, supported them as they're unraveling their story, held space for them, and given them confidence to do so. So, because all of that, they've been able to go to ministers and share their story, speak to media, speak to the people in their families. But we've also done that with doctors who are also frustrated because they're seeing these really unwell patients and they need to do something in the best of their ability to And we've also collaborated with researchers and other health professionals and then other organisations. And as we say, if you know 7 women, you should know endometriosis because it affects 1 in 7. And that's more common than breast cancer, diabetes, and asthma. And so when we put it in these terms, we realize, oh, I probably know someone with endo that they're very likely to be suffering alone. When you rally around people, that isolation reduces and you give them the next step. So I think that we've done an enormous amount of work in the awareness space, but it's being driven by people with lived experience, willing and able to share their stories. And some of them are really horrific. My story is nowhere near horrific compared to the others, but it's not an uncommon story. And when you think of and listen to these women and what they've gone through, you think, how is this happening? How is this happening? And that fire in my belly that I mentioned earlier occurs in all the people that we work with, and they just want to funnel their experiences so that the next generation doesn't have to go through it. We're at a point now where, in my humble opinion, awareness for awareness sake is done. We need awareness and action, because it's one thing to know about it, but people then spin on their wheels. What do I do next? People need help right now. And so that's where what we do at QENDO is we give them services, we give them those next steps. So that, yes, they're aware of what's going on, they know what's normal and what's not normal, and then they know what to do about it.
I hear the average diagnosis time is 7 to 10 years.
It is. So we have, because of the awareness, that's now dropped to around 6.5 in a very short period of time, because people are, again, not just thinking what they have to live with is normal, but that's still far too long. 6.5 years living with these symptoms is such a long time. And to think about their mental health impacts, their financial impacts, not being able to go to work or school or study, and just their life, that is far too long. So we still have a lot of awareness to do, but it needs an action or call to action behind it every time we talk about the word.
I can hear a lot of your values coming out in this conversation, and I love it because you're on a mission. I wonder if you have a personal vision that encapsulates some of what you said, or maybe something different. What is it that really drives you at the core of things, Jess? How do you see the world in the future, for example?
I look at my daughter, who's 8, and I remember I was 8, had no idea about periods or this, or even the word endometriosis. And until you know these words, you don't know what you don't know, right? So when you start to learn what these are, it's like these doors open. And for my generation, generations before me, and I think even still this generation, there's so many closed doors, they don't even know that they're there. So whilst we don't have a cure, and probably in my lifetime, we're very unlikely to have a cure, I think we will, in my lifetime, actually understand the disease better. I think we'll know what the lesions are, what they're doing, and how they move in the body. That will happen in my lifetime, but I don't think a cure would happen in my lifetime, right? But what I do hope for is people in my daughter's generation to know the word, because when you know the term, you know it's a thing, you can then go and get help. And because we're educating GPs and we're educating the wider group, they're not going to go to a health professional and be blocked. That door's not going to be blocked. We want them to open it. And she comes to me now in school holidays, comes to meetings, and I'll have to tell you, last school holiday she came with me to this meeting. And she has grown up doing this stuff with me. I was breastfeeding her in Parliament as we were pulling the National Action Plan together. I was in labour as I was lobbying politicians to get this National Action Plan up and running, right? Policy. So she has been with me the whole way, and she sat with me last holidays, and the person I was speaking to couldn't pronounce the word endometriosis. And she paused and she said so kindly, excuse me, I just need to correct you. It's actually endometriosis. And I was so proud of her because she knows the word. And if you know these terms, she will be able to search the word or, start to question things. So whilst, the beautiful big goal is a cure, I'm a realist. What else can we do to get to that point? educate these people.
Yeah, giving people the word. I love that story. I got goosebumps as you were saying it, because when someone has that awareness and that knowledge and that understanding, they are empowered within themselves to advocate for themselves, to know that being dismissed by somebody who doesn't know is not okay, and that they can look for the right people in the right places, and we can close that treatment or that diagnosis gap from 6.5 years. And congratulations on getting that down, on your work towards that. What can we do to bring it down further, faster? And that, as you say, that awareness is so important for the next generations coming through and the current ones. Even you said your mum's just been recently diagnosed.
Yeah, and particularly with women who are going through perimenopause or menopause, often so endo is so complex because you might have a lot of disease and going on inside of you and have no symptoms at all until you go through a significant or even a seemingly small life situation or event. While other people might have a tiny amount of disease, but it be in the most enormous amounts of pain. And so it's tricky then to, yeah, manage disease and manage symptoms. And a lot of women, like my mum, she, could have 4 babies, no problem at all. As she says, could look at my dad and fall pregnant, no problem. So her fertility wasn't impacted.
Mm.
And it was when she started to go perimenopause and menopausal that all of this really ramped up. And so that was for her at a later stage in her life. Looking back on everything, she just put up with a lot. She just put up
Yeah.
with it thinking it was normal. And when it was so unbearable to manage and she just simply couldn't manage it anymore is when she went to seek help. And I know from the thousands of people who have spoken with me over these over 12 years, they're in exactly the same situation.
And it's so important that people understand it's not a siloed condition over here, separate from anything else. As you say, that intersection with menopause and a time where existing conditions can become amplified. And then think about all of the other conditions that intersect endometriosis, and that somehow we need to untangle those threads and really understand what's going on. What might be some other conditions that could intersect with endometriosis?
So we often hear, particularly around perimenopause and menopause, the ugly cousin called adenomyosis. So it's where the inside of the uterus is really invading itself. And if you think of, that Fruit Ninja app that was around a couple of years ago where the fruit would drop down and you'd have a knife and you would be cutting it. That's how I visualize adenomyosis. So if you imagine just these intense, sharp pains going on inside, like these fruits just exploding inside your uterus, that's something that can occur. It's a lot of people with endo. I think someone said as high as 60% of people with endo also do have adenomyosis from the
Wow.
most recent World Congress.
Yeah.
And again, thinking menopause and perimenopause, that's one that really starts to ramp up. So there's lots of clotting, lots of bleeding, more than can be managed.
Mm.
So that's a big one. We also have anxiety, which is really, really huge. POTS, which is like where people faint a lot, and differences in blood pressures. There's a lot of people who are neurodiverse in this space as well. PCOS, infertility, a lot of these women's health issues spring out from endometriosis. And that's why it's this quite large condition and quite complex.
And possibly quite hard to see and to untangle from those other things that might look like something else, perhaps. And then there is this underlying component that hasn't been recognized or realized, maybe.
Absolutely. And we often will say if people can't just continue their life without simple management tools like Panadol, Nurofen, and a heat pack, if people can't manage just with those things, then we do need to think about, getting some additional help, right? And even in someone's period, 80 mils, I think it's a third of a cup is what someone will pass across their entire bleed of that period, right?
Wow.
So women who are blooding several times in their menstrual products, that's not normal. And so coming back to, right, if we can't be managed with a Panadol Nurofen heat pack and I'm bleeding more than that, then we really need to start thinking about first, okay, is it endometriosis? Let's get the hormones checked. Let's get some blood panels done to rule out any ovarian cancers or any endometrial cancers before we start going down. And in this day and age, whilst, well, historically endometriosis has only been able to have a diagnosis from a laparoscopy, which is people call it an elective, non-invasive surgery, but it's often not elective. It's, I need some help here. They're blowing up the belly, they're putting scopes in, cutting out the lesions where possible, and hopefully they are cutting them out where possible. How is that not invasive? Yeah, totally invasive. And then it can take up to 12 weeks for you to feel like yourself again. So that is what has always been the way for diagnosis, and only recently, with very new technology, very new training, we can look at endometriosis or see it on scans. But that's not everyone. There are only a few of them around the country that enables that. And we've got a lot of work to do in that space. Not every person can do that very, very specific scanning. So yeah, it's tricky to get all of that information together, but there's so much work happening in this area too. Like, this is a really, really fast moving research space because women and families and the whole sector are calling out, going, come on, let's make this move.
Yeah, the prevalence is too high to ignore. We have to do something, and the work that you're doing is leading into that. I think what you've just said is a really important point, is that it's not just about how does an individual manage their condition. It's how do we get people to have a non-invasive test process that's easily accessible, and the person is doing that test is trained and has professional capability, that they're not going to dismiss you or send you down another 10 rabbit holes. I mean, talk to us about the gaps in care coordination for a moment.
So I'll give you a bit of a picture, right? So someone will go, or perhaps will be listening to this and going, right, well, I can't manage with a Panadol, Nurofen, or a heat pack. All right, well, I should probably go get that looked at. They go to their GP, and their GP might say to them, oh, just lose some weight, or you're too stressed. And, come back to me in 3 or so months, and, we'll see how you're going. Meanwhile, that person has become worse, because this is a cycle, and also a pain cycle. Things get progressively worse over time. So whilst in the initial conversation, that GP, who was very well-meaning but very unaware, has, not really intercepted with education, information, resources, some, tests that they could do. They've said, oh, you're stressed, you're overweight, try lose some weight and come back. This is still a common question that people, or common occurrence that people are experiencing. And sometimes that patient will go, all right, well, I'll go home, I'll try to do all those things. They can't lose the weight because of all the reasons going on. Or they might present to emergency with this intense pain that they don't know where it's come from, or again, it's getting progressively worse. And the emergency doesn't know what to do. They do an ultrasound if they can to rule out appendicitis. Sometimes they take out your appendix, not needing to, because that's what they think it is. Or they put it down to an ovarian cyst rupture. And they're really limited in the emergency department around what they can do. So that patient, that woman, goes home, right, well, I've been to my GP, I've now been to an emergency department. Okay, well, what is going on with me? And they start to question everything, because they have tried to engage with health professionals, again, who are well-meaning most of the time, but just unaware. I often say health professionals are not misbehaving, they're misunderstanding. They're misunderstanding us as women and what we know our bodies. So listen to us. And so that is a real, again, so many gaps in those services, so many gaps in that care. You've got some surgeons who aren't trained to do the procedure and are doing it anyway. You have other health professionals who are similar, not trained in this space. And then you have an amazing group, an amazing, what I call the village of health professionals who are truly, truly doing the right thing, are trained appropriately, are listening to patients, and are getting amazing outcomes. And we need to elevate them, and we need to support that workforce, because if we don't have that workforce, women can't get better. And so what we have seen at QENDO is we've been hearing about, I've been to emergency, I've been to the GP, and I just need someone to listen to me and help me be pointed in the right direction. And we've launched QENDO Care. We say until there's a cure, there is care. And this is
Love
where a
that.
nurse who is, she's specialized. She's actually been an IVF nurse for 8 years, and she has a lived experience. And you can actually book in and speak with her for an hour, up to an hour for free, and over the phone. And where we have this space where we can completely listen to all of the things going on for you and help you with those next steps. So it might be the right help professional to go to. It might be organizing all of the symptoms, working out, what will your finances allow and how do we prioritize that? So there are significant gaps in the service because of the lack of coordination, and we're trying to fill that gap because of all these thousands of stories we've been hearing from women saying, I just need someone to sit with me and help me along that way.
How do people access QENDO Care? How does it work? Let's say that I've got some symptoms, I've heard this podcast, or I've become aware of the conversation around endometriosis, and I'm going, well, what do I do next? Where do I go? How do I access this?
You just go to QENDO, QENDO.org.au/QuendoCare, QENDOCARE, and you literally just find a date and a time that works for you and book an appointment. And this is for people with lived experience, it's for partners, for mums, for parents, for teachers, anyone at all. So there's no referral required. You can book in straight away and it's completely free. So the calendar is on the website that you can find the date and time that suits you and book yourself in.
So this is a telehealth call on a meeting like this one, or is it a phone call? How does that work?
It depends on what the client is after. So often it will be it is all telehealth, either be on a video call or just a phone call, because we have some people who are rural, out past Cunnamulla and need support right now. And video conferencing does not work out there because of the reception. So we can get on a landline and do a phone call. And then we're here to follow up with you because there might be some things that you're working on, and it can be a big discussion to have, particularly if someone has just shared it for the very first time. It's a lot to unpack. So we will book in another session just to follow up to see how you're going. If there's some goal setting happening in that appointment, it might be as simple as talking with someone about X, Y, and Z. We want to check in to see how you went with that. Or as we know, life comes up. So it may be that we have to reevaluate the goal and work out, all right, well, we've had this life event happen. What are your steps next?
Amazing. Amazing that you're offering this in a way that's so accessible in terms of the format, and an hour is very generous, and having it for free is incredible. It must have taken a lot of work to get to this point.
So much work. I have wanted to do something like this for 12 years because we have our amazing helpline that's available 24/7, 365 days of the year, even Christmas Day. A couple of years ago when I was on the helpline, I was taking calls on Christmas Day. And, I recognize we need a dedicated space to be held, and we needed funders, and we needed the right person to hold that space for the people. And also it wasn't me. Yeah, because you get into this space as a leader in these organizations, and I wanted to be some levels of separation as well, so that we can have a dedicated space who has someone that has energy and that has training to do that. And we were getting some really disturbing calls on the helpline, and our beautiful peers were equally not trained to take those calls either, because like we've been saying, endo is complex. It's so many things, and a way to open up that valve and let it all out is QENDO Care, and it's the first phase. So we're hoping to expand the scope in the very, very near future. But at the first stage, it was, okay, let's have someone that's available to speak in real time now. And if people do have emergency situations or urgent things that they need to talk about, they can just email us and say, there's no bookings or you're fully booked. Can I please, by any chance, have a session? And we do have some backup emergency sessions that we allocate as well.
That's amazing, Jess. And there's another way that you support people too, right, through your volunteer community network across Australia.
We do. Oh, it's just such grassroots work because they're the people out in the communities doing the local education support. So people can come to, we have over 20 different communities across Australia. We pay for the coffee or the tea at a local cafe so that people can come and share and connect. Parents bring their girls, their teens, their kids. They come themselves. And we've been doing that. QENDO's been doing that since the 90s. And we now have some funding that can enable people to come where they don't have perhaps funds as well to be able to pay for a coffee. I remember years ago, someone didn't want to come to a session, but she really needed support because she couldn't afford a coffee and she felt really isolated and like she wouldn't be welcomed. And that planted the seed in my mind. This was in 2018, that if we could ever just pay for people's coffees to enable them and reduce that barrier, then we will. And so we've been able to do that now. But we also have a lot of other programs like the mentor program. If someone needs support, dedicated one-on-one support, we'll sign them up with a mentor and go through a 6-week program, again, completely free. And then we also have the Manage Endo program. So what we found is people can't in to see the right health professionals, and they are struggling to afford to see people, and they are struggling to actually get in to see them. And clinicians and health professionals were coming to me saying, Jess, if I could just film my first session with a patient and give that to them, so they come with education, they come with some tools and some strategies, that would be amazing. So in 2019, you can see it up here in the corner, that all those little yellow Post-it notes up there.
Yeah, I can, yeah.
That was myself and another person on my deck plotting out, okay, what topics in 2019 would we have, right? And we just launched that program not long ago, and it has over 30 videos from different health professionals sharing their perspective, or sharing, here's how to decrease a flare at home, or here's how to talk to your partner about painful sex, or here's how to think about insurance with endo or a chronic condition. There's so many different things that people can step through themselves. And the idea is that they go to a health professional, or they can start to learn how to manage some symptoms at home. So yes, we have the lesions with endo, but we also have all of the symptoms. The lesions, look, they do their own thing, but we can look at managing symptoms. And so it's starting to give people that education and awareness of, right, there's all of these different things that I could start to do myself.
Yeah.
And hopefully that rebuilds their confidence, increases their agency, and, helps reduce that, I can't do anything. We're trying to empower them to know that they do have tools. We just need to open up those doors for people to know what those tools are.
That's so incredible. And what strikes me as you're describing all of the things that come up, I wouldn't have even thought of insurance. And I suppose you don't know what you don't know. You get told you have this diagnosis, as you said on your hand, endometriosis, and the stage that you're at, and you're thinking, what is that? Who do I talk to about this? And you start learning about the disease itself. And then you start to realize, probably, or you may not realize, the implications for other areas of your life. So it's so great that you have that resource. And is that available through your app or through your website to get that information?
It's on the website. It's just qendo.org.au/manageendo. And it's also, our app will be relaunching it. You can still download it now, but we're having a little bit of a glow up. So at the end of the month, we're having, we'll be embedded there as well.
That's fantastic, Jess. And we at Sage are really excited to be working alongside you in raising awareness, particularly from our point of view. Hearing that the federal government was going to put aside $578 million into menopause, and including a big focus on menopause awareness, I'm thinking, how much of that touches on other related, intrinsically connected conditions like endometriosis? And so together we can launch awareness campaigns and initiatives, we can promote advocacy, we can secure funding, we can do outreach, we can connect people with the practitioners that they need to get the right help. And we're really excited to be doing this work with you.
I love it because it just extends the village. We can't all do this alone, and working in silos is what people have done for years. women build communities. We've done it for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
And we know that when we are working towards a goal or working towards the right partnerships and collaboration, we can really make moves. So we are equally as excited, and to talk even more so about the crossovers between perimenopause, menopause, and endo. It's an area that isn't really addressed as much as it needs to be. And we know so many people are suffering at that stage. So yeah, bring it on.
Thank you, Jess, for your time today. I wonder if you have any last words or tips for people listening to this about endometriosis or getting help or anything like that.
If in doubt, if you're starting to doubt something or starting to question something, listen to that instinct. Give us a call, book in with us. We can chat with you. It may not be time for you to take action now, but at least we can start to make a bit of a plan for parents, for yourself, as a partner, anyone at all impacted. We are here, and you do not need to do this alone.
Thank you so much for your time, Jess. I know you have a lot going on. You've been doing so many amazing things, and we really appreciate you carving out time to be a guest on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jess.